Bel Paese cheese preparation. Bel Paese, which in Italian means beautiful country, is a semi-soft table cheese originating from Melzo, just outside Milan. It is known for its mild, buttery flavor and delicate aroma, which highlights the freshness of the milk. Loved throughout Italy as a versatile everyday cheese, Bel Paese is smooth, slightly sweet, and quick to mature. It is enjoyed by both young and old and is often paired with fruit bread or wine. It is also highly appreciated for its ability to melt evenly in sauces and baked dishes. Although traditionally produced by large commercial manufacturers, artisanal and homemade versions of Bel Paese made on a small scale can achieve exceptional richness and texture when high-quality milk is used. To prepare this cheese, we will need the following ingredients. We begin with 2 gallons of non-ultra-pasteurized milk. We will also need 1/16 of a teaspoon of Te061 culture, 1/16 of a teaspoon of Ma011 culture, 1/64 of a teaspoon of Geotrichum candidum, and 1/32 of a teaspoon of MM100 culture. Additionally, we will need half a teaspoon of liquid calcium chloride, especially if we are using pasteurized milk, and half a teaspoon of single-strength liquid rennet. Finally, to prepare the brine, we will need 1 gallon of chlorine-free water, 2.2 pounds of salt, 1 tablespoon of calcium chloride, and 1 teaspoon of white vinegar. With these ingredients ready, we are set to begin the cheese-making process. Water bath. The most recommended method for making this cheese is to heat the milk using a water bath, preferably with a sous-vide, as it allows precise control of the temperatures required to ripen the milk, set the curd, and later cook the curd. At this stage, the water temperature is set to 39 degrees Celsius, which is the ideal temperature at which the milk should be heated to add the cultures responsible for its ripening prior to coagulation. This thermal control allows us to achieve better results in flavor, aroma, and texture in the final cheese. Heating the milk. Once the milk has been poured into the pot, we begin stirring continuously while carefully monitoring the temperature. The goal is to gradually bring the milk up to 39 degrees Celsius, which matches the temperature of the water surrounding the pot in the water bath. At this point, the initial temperature of the milk is around 19 degrees Celsius, so the heating must be done progressively and evenly. Adding the cultures. At this point, the milk has reached 39 degrees Celsius, exactly the same temperature as the water bath. This confirms that the milk is in the proper condition to proceed with the next step of the process. Now we remove the ladle and the thermometer and then take the cultures we will be using. We carefully sprinkle the cultures over the entire surface of the milk, making sure they are evenly distributed and not concentrated in one area. Once the cultures have been added, we do not stir immediately. Instead, we wait approximately 5 minutes to allow the cultures to properly rehydrate on the surface of the milk. We cover the pot, set 5 minutes on the timer, allow the process to continue without interference, and once that time has passed, we return to proceed with the preparation. Culture ripening. Alright, the 5 minutes for culture rehydration have now passed. At this point, we uncover the pot and proceed to gently mix the milk, using slow movements from bottom to top to ensure the cultures are evenly incorporated throughout the entire volume. We mix thoroughly, without excessive agitation, only what is necessary to achieve a homogeneous mixture. Once the cultures are fully integrated, we cover the pot again and begin the ripening period. Now we wait 1 hour, during which the cultures will act on the milk. During this stage, we maintain a constant temperature of 39 degrees Celsius. Heating for coagulation. Alright, the 1 hour ripening period is now complete. We remove the lid from the pot, place the thermometer back in, and then increase the sous-vide temperature to 42 degrees Celsius. We now begin to gradually raise the temperature of the milk, maintaining constant and gentle agitation to ensure the heat is evenly distributed. This controlled temperature increase is key to properly preparing the milk before the next step in the process. Milk coagulation. At this point, the milk is reaching 42 degrees Celsius. Once the temperature is confirmed, we remove the thermometer and begin gently stirring the milk to prepare for the addition of the additives. First, we add half a teaspoon of calcium chloride, previously diluted in a small amount of chlorine-free water. We continue stirring steadily to ensure the calcium chloride is evenly distributed throughout the milk. Next, we add the rennet, also half a teaspoon, likewise diluted in a small amount of water, and continue mixing with gentle movements to incorporate it properly without creating unnecessary turbulence. Once mixing is complete, we cover the pot and set the timer for 1 hour to allow the milk to coagulate. Curd cutting. The 1 hour resting period required for coagulation has now been completed. At this point, the curd is ready to be cut. We begin by cutting with the curd harp in a horizontal position, making sure to pass through the curd evenly. Next, we continue cutting using the harp in a vertical position, forming regular cubes that will allow controlled whey release. Once the cutting is complete, we cover the pot again and allow the curd to rest for approximately 5 minutes. This resting time is essential for the cut edges to heal, helping the curd maintain its structure during the following stages of the process. Curd cooking. After the 5 minutes have passed, we begin the cooking process of the curd grains. We maintain the temperature at 42 degrees Celsius and cook the curd slowly. How do we do this? We stir gently using slow movements from top to bottom, allowing the grains to cook evenly. This process is maintained for 30 minutes. We set the time on the timer and continue with a slow controlled stirring without abrupt movements. In this way, the grains expel most of the whey and begin to compact. Curd settling? Very well. We have finished stirring for half an hour. Now we let the curd rest for 5 minutes, allowing the cooked grains to settle at the bottom of the pot. This step takes place prior to whey drainage. Whey drainage. Very well. The 5 minutes of settling have now passed. At this point, we begin draining the whey, removing it slowly and gradually. It is important to drain the whey through a fine hole colander to prevent the loss of curd grains. We pour the whey in a slow and controlled manner until most of it has been drained. curd consolidation. For this step, we use a mat like the one you see here, which allows us to move the curd to one side of the pot. In this way, the remaining whey stays separated on the opposite side of the mat. Once positioned at the edge of the pot, we press firmly and evenly, aiming to obtain the most compact curd possible. Curd transfer to the mold. Here I have a plate, and on top of it I place a bamboo mat. On the mat I position the mold previously lined with cloth. From this point on, I begin transferring the curd gradually until the mold is completely filled. Initial pressing. Alright, we have finished filling the mold. Now, we place the follower and using our hand begin compacting the curd, giving the cheese its initial shape. Gradually, we apply even pressure. If desired, a small amount of weight can be added and left to rest. After 30 minutes, we flip the cheese and continue this process until it begins to look slightly firmer. Final pressing. For the final pressing, it is recommended to use a weight between 3 and 4 kilograms. In this case, I am using a Dutch press, applying a weight slightly greater than 4 kilograms to the cheese. The cheese should be pressed for 24 hours, performing regular flips throughout this period. This process allows proper expulsion of residual whey and helps define the final shape of the cheese. Weighing the cheese. Once removed from the press, we proceed to weigh the cheese. The recorded weight is 857 grams. Brine salting. Once removed from the press, the cheese must be salted in brine, according to the recipe. We leave it for 6 hours on each side. While one side is floating, we sprinkle salt over the exposed surface. In total, the salting process lasts 12 hours. Air drying the cheese. Once removed from the brine, the cheese is carefully dried with paper towels. It is then left to air dry for 48 hours, allowing the surface to dry evenly before continuing with the process. Ripening box. During the first ripening stage, the cheese is stored in a plastic container which we use as a ripening box. At the base of the container, we place a mat which prevents the cheese from coming into direct contact with the bottom and allows it to breathe properly. Inside the container, we add a glass of water to create a very humid environment above 98%. These conditions are essential for the cheese to develop properly during this initial ripening stage. During the first ripening stage, we cover the ripening box while leaving the central opening open to allow air circulation. The cheese ripens in the refrigerator for 3 weeks at 11 degrees Celsius. Cleaning during the first ripening. During the ripening process, you will notice that after approximately 8 days, the cheese begins to develop a white surface layer. This layer is the result of the growth of Geotrichum candidum and is completely normal at this stage. To perform the cleaning, we prepare a light brine. In a cup of water, we add 1 heaping tablespoon of salt and dissolve it thoroughly. Next, we take a clean paper towel and moisten it with the brine we just prepared. Using this paper towel, we gently rub the entire surface of the cheese, evenly removing the white layer. Then we use another clean, dry paper towel to remove any excess moisture from the surface of the cheese. This is also a good time to discard any water accumulated at the bottom of the ripening box. Finally, we place the cheese back into the box and continue with the normal ripening process. Here you can see the cheese after the first ripening carried out at 11 degrees Celsius for 3 weeks. At this point, the cheese has a weight of 779 grams, approximately 80 grams less than when it came out of the press. This weight loss is the result of brine salting, air drying, and the first ripening process itself. Visually, the cheese shows a reduction in height and an increase in diameter, with smoothly rounded edges and a domed profile. For the second ripening, the cheese is wrapped in wax paper and stored in the refrigerator at 4 degrees Celsius for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks of ripening, we are ready to unwrap the Bel Paese cheese. The first step is to remove the wax paper, which has protected the cheese throughout the aging process. As expected with this type of cheese, some surface mold may develop during ripening, and this will be cleaned. For cleaning, we prepare a light brine by mixing 1 cup of water with 1 tablespoon of salt. We then moisten a paper towel with the brine and gently rub the entire surface of the cheese to remove any mold that has formed. If there are areas that are more affected, a knife can be used carefully to remove only the superficial layer. Once the cheese is clean, we dry it thoroughly with paper towels, making sure to remove any excess moisture before cutting. Now we proceed to cut the cheese and move on to the tasting. At this point, I can confirm that the flavor of this cheese is excellent, very mild, smooth and well balanced, with the classic Bel Paese character, perfect to enjoy on its own or paired with other foods.